History has a fascinating way of shaping its leaders. And for some, that journey begins not in the grandeur of public office, but on the battlefields of war. Today, we're diving into the stories of modern American presidents who served during some of the nation's most defining conflicts. Their military service didn't just shape their character, it profoundly influenced their decisions as commanders-in-chief. Let's take a closer look at these leaders in uniform. From battlefields to the highest office, their experiences taught them invaluable lessons in duty, sacrifice, and leadership. Our journey begins with the Spanish-American War of 1898, a short but significant conflict that marked the United States as a rising power on the world stage. Among the many Americans who answered the call to arms was a fiery, larger-than-life figure named Theodore Roosevelt. At the time, Roosevelt was Assistant Secretary of the Navy, but the thrill of action was too tempting for a man with his adventurous spirit. Roosevelt resigned his post and assembled a volunteer cavalry unit known as the Rough Riders. Comprised of cowboys, miners, and adventurers, the Rough Riders became legendary for their bravery, and no moment defined them more than the Battle of San Juan Hill. Charging uphill under heavy fire, Roosevelt led his men with an unshakable courage that earned him not just victory, but the status of a national war hero. Years later, that same boldness propelled him to the presidency, where he applied his big stick philosophy to international diplomacy and domestic reform. Roosevelt's time in combat had taught him the value of decisive action, an approach he carried into every challenge he faced as a leader. Fast forward to World War I. The Great War changed the world forever, and though the United States joined the conflict relatively late, it still played a pivotal role. Among the soldiers sent to the fields of France was Harry S. Truman, a young man from Missouri whose life would soon change forever. Truman served as the captain of an artillery unit, leading his battery through the unforgiving trials of war. Known for his unflinching decision-making and devotion to his men, Captain Truman earned their respect on and off the battlefield. That wartime experience wouldn't just shape Truman as a leader, it laid the foundation for his steady hand during some of the most tumultuous moments in modern history, from the end of World War II to the early days of the Cold War. To lead soldiers through uncertainty is to lead with calm determination, and Truman carried that same quality into the presidency. Also serving during World War I was Dwight D. Eisenhower, though his experience was vastly different. A young officer in the newly formed Tank Corps, Eisenhower spent the war stateside, training troops and mastering the mechanics of modern warfare. Though he didn't see combat in World War I, his experiences during this period prepared him for the role of a lifetime in World War II, where he served as Supreme Allied Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Forces. Eisenhower would later bring the discipline and strategic vision forged during his military career to the Oval Office, guiding the United States through the complexities of the post-war era. And now, we turn to arguably the most destructive conflict in human history, World War II. Never before had the fight for freedom and democracy carried such high stakes on a global scale. Among those who put their lives on the line were several future presidents, each leaving their mark both on the battlefield and in history. John F. Kennedy was one of them. As a young lieutenant in the U.S. Navy, Kennedy found himself in command of a patrol torpedo boat known as PT-109. In August 1943, PT-109 was rammed by a Japanese destroyer in the dark waters of the Pacific, leaving Kennedy and his crew stranded in shark-infested waters. Despite his injuries, Kennedy displayed remarkable bravery, towing a wounded sailor to safety with a makeshift lifeline clenched between his teeth. For days, he and his men survived on a remote island until they were rescued. That experience defined Kennedy's sense of duty and resilience, qualities that would define the youngest ever elected president as he faced the Cuban Missile Crisis and championed the space race. Sharing in Kennedy's legacy of World War II naval service was Lyndon B. Johnson, though his path took a unique turn. In 1942, as a U.S. congressman, Johnson joined the Navy and became a lieutenant commander. During a mission to observe combat in the Pacific, the aircraft he was aboard came under enemy fire. Johnson's decisive actions during the harrowing ordeal earned him the Silver Star, though his wartime exploits were shorter than others due to his return to Congress soon after. His time in uniform, brief as it was, cemented his awareness of the sacrifices made by American servicemen and women, insight he later applied during the Vietnam War, a conflict that defined much of his presidency. Meanwhile, another future president was navigating the vast expanse of the Pacific, Richard Nixon. Serving as a lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy, Nixon worked tirelessly in logistics, ensuring troops received essential supplies. Known for his resourcefulness and discipline, Nixon's service during the war taught him valuable lessons about organization and efficiency, traits that would later serve him well in his political career, even as the complexities of his presidency proved far greater than anything he faced during the war. Gerald Ford, too, played a role in the World War II effort. As a young lieutenant in the U.S. Navy, Ford served on the aircraft carrier USS Monterey in the Pacific Theater. His duties placed him in the heart of naval warfare, where he witnessed firsthand the courage and resilience of those who served alongside him. Later in life, Ford's modest and steady approach to leadership was a reflection of the values he upheld during his naval service and his resolve in the face of political turmoil. Last but not least, we cannot forget George H.W. Bush, a man whose World War II service stands as one of the most harrowing stories among America's wartime presidents. At just 18 years old, Bush became the youngest naval aviator in the U.S. Navy. Flying combat missions in the Pacific, he faced danger with a level of maturity far beyond his years. In 1944, during a bombing mission over Japanese territory, Bush's plane was hit by enemy fire. With his aircraft ablaze, Bush managed to release his payload and escape the doomed plane before it crashed into the sea. He was rescued by a U.S. submarine, but the memory of that fateful mission and the crewmates he lost stayed with him for the rest of his life. Bush's wartime service taught him the fragility of life and the importance of courage under fire, lessons that guided him as he navigated the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Gulf War, and the complexities of the post-Cold War world. From the Spanish-American War to World War II, these presidents exemplify how military service can forge extraordinary leaders. Whether it was Theodore Roosevelt charging up San Juan Hill, John F. Kennedy towing a crewmate to safety, or George H.W. Bush surviving against impossible odds, their experiences on the battlefield gave them a deeper understanding of duty, sacrifice, and what it means to serve. These values guided them during some of America's most pivotal moments, proof that true leadership often begins not in the halls of power, but in the crucibles of war. As we look back on their remarkable journeys, we're reminded that the qualities of leadership, courage, resilience, and integrity are timeless. And for these presidents, their time in uniform was more than just a chapter in their lives. It was the foundation of their legacy.